Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Especially looking at the national exams beginning with UCE already rolled out, PLE about to roll out, and USCE about to roll out. We also look at stories of a teacher being arrested for leaked exams. We look further and see expired degrees. Our education system has had a windfall of different things happening to it. But the biggest question is education versus employability. A report came out by UWEZO in 2014 that showed that the literacy in this country was at 76.5%. The same report spoke about 63% of graduates that could not get employed. Why is there an irony between employability and our education system? Where is the missing match between the two? If we have 714,000 that sat last year PLE, and we had 345,000 sit UCE, and also had 97,000 sit their S6, and 30,000 live in the universities every year, 9,000 jobs available. Who is to employ all this capacity that comes out of university? Where is the mismatch? We have more questions than answers. Is vocational training the answer? This new curriculum, does it seem to be the silver bullet to answer the employment question, especially with the young people we're chanting out of the tertiary and the universities? Tonight, we discuss education versus employability in this country, but also in hindsight, we look at the new curriculum. Now, let's meet the panel.
Known for his acumen in transforming education, Dr. Fajil Mande. The first female dean of the School of Education, Makerere, Dr. Ezati Betty. He is a policy analyst at the Ministry of Education, Brighton Barugahare. Samuel Davis, education expert with educational leadership. A graduate of Bachelor's of Arts in Education and Master's in Theology. He is a founder and ED Believe Christian Schools. Our own and the Dean at the School of Women and Gender Studies, Professor Sarah Sali. All on Behind the Headlines on your national broadcaster, UBC.
Again, to Behind the Headlines tonight, we look at a topical issue especially that impacts all of us. When we look at the number of young people that are being shunted out of universities and were called, so looking at our literacy levels at about 76%, but also 63% of our graduates are failing to get employed. Why? That's the biggest question. We want to be able to influence what happens in policy, but also most of all, dig deeper to find out what exactly are the solutions to this problem. We'll start with looking at the challenges within our education system. We'll go further to look at what is the problem with getting employed, and finally we'll end it with solutions there. I'll introduce the panel as it has already been introduced there, but you can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel. Let us know what you think about what's happening tonight. But you can also get us on 0709 60 25 92. That doubles both as our text line and our WhatsApp line. Also on our X, which was formerly Twitter, get there, drop your tweet, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Let us know what you think. Gentlemen and ladies, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for coming and being able to share your knowledge in this patent subject of education versus employability. But before we go any further, we also want to recognize that the incidents that happened in the Queen Elizabeth National Park there, ADF killing some of the tourists and their guide there, very sad occurrences this morning when we heard about some of those things happening. But also we want to recognize what's happening in Gaza and Israel. So I'll let my panelists here at least make a comment on this. I'll start with Professor Sarah, and we'll move on to Samuel and Doctor, then finally Mr. Mande there. Professor, your thoughts on both the incident of ADF in the Queen Elizabeth Park, but also last week a truck burnt in Kasese by the same militant group there. Your thoughts on it, and we'll move on.
Yes, thank you, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. These incidents are definitely very sad incidents, and we thought we had crossed that path, but it looks like we are still stuck with some of these elements in our society The reassuring thing is the statement from His Excellency the President about every effort that is being taken to address this matter. So we condole with those who lost their lives. We know it's going to impact on our tourism, but we pray that with the assurances from the state, these matters are going to be resolved and that the tourist sector will be revived. But we really pray that this situation is brought under control. And about the situation in Gaza, of course, we know this conflict has been on for a long time, and it's very complicated, and it gets complicated by the day. And we thought we were past it also, so we were shocked with the attacks initially by Hamas and then the retaliation by the Israeli Defense Forces. But again, it's another situation we pray that the international community reins in, particularly for the sake of peace. And what is unfolding there is a real humanitarian crisis. So the earlier it can be resolved and peace is returned, and some of the underlying problems resolved once and for all, maybe the better. Otherwise, it's not a good state to be. So we are sorry with everyone who lost their lives and those who lost their people in both Gaza and in Palestine and in Israel. And we pray for the humanitarian crisis to be resolved quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Samuel, over to you.
Well, thank you, Timothy. Like my fellow panelists said, it is very unfortunate, heartbreaking, and it raises emotions to see one human turning against another human. But the saddest part of it is that these people are now attacking innocent Ugandans, innocent visitors. But at the heart of it all is, what is the problem with humanity? The fallenness of man, the sinfulness of man is ravaging. However, as a country, we pray with the families, and we are resting assured that the government is taking care of that. Our president, our armed forces are taking charge of that. In regard to Israel and Palestine, it is also unfortunate. Sometimes we think the West is more advanced than Africa. But when I combine Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia, I see that human is human. We are all fallen. But we want to pray for peace all over. We want to pray for peace in Uganda and for peace in Israel and in Ukraine and Russia. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Betty.
Thank you, Timothy. I think my heartfelt condolence to those who have lost a beloved one in the lorry fire, as well as in the recent attack 2 days ago. It's really unfortunate, but many times when things like that happen, sometimes it's meant to scare off everybody and to send fear on the population as well as visitors who may want to come to the country. But I want to look at this as a one-off, and like my colleagues have said, we have got the assurance that actions is being taken, that the security forces in this country are not sleeping. They are going to work on that. So that reassurance is kind of consoling, that it's late, life has been lost, but something is being done to restore peace in the area. About is the Gaza area, you know, as we thought the war in Ukraine was the only one, another one comes in the scene. And so you see fire on almost all the continent now, even areas that used to be peaceful. And I think globally there's need to really rethink how to restore peace globally, and particularly deal with the areas that are currently warring and deal with them in such a way that we avoid the losses that are taking place, the innocent people that are being killed, the children that are being killed, starvation as a result of lack of food and resources that are needed for those who are living in those areas. I think I'll end it at that point.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Fadjil?
Yes, to begin with, what happened with the ADF, I think this is a very sad situation, as my friends have said. And it shows, for example, that as a country, Uganda, we still need to work together and achieve a common goal, a common purpose in life. Because why should somebody be attacking Uganda, which has been gradually gaining security on and on? So I think it's a matter of really working together and removing these artificial differences so that people will have a close purpose in life. Then about the Israel and the disturbance in that area, I think this still shows us, one, the brutality of the human being today. Not all, but for me, I see there is increased brutality even when I watch games like, for example, wrestling games and so on and so forth. And then I say, I'm a sportsman, but should that be part of sports when you are breaking somebody's limbs and so on and so forth? So I think there is an increasing amount of brutality. It no longer matters a lot how many people are killed. When you look at the numbers of people that have been killed, both in the Ukraine-Russian, but war, and then the one in Israel, so many thousands of people. And the rest of the world is very quiet about it. So apart from those directly fighting, and for us who are watching, I think we are all buried in this spirit of animalism and this beastly behavior. Are you getting me? And we need to come out together and really get that spirit so that we live in the global village harmoniously, discussing with each other instead of battling and killing ourselves.
Thank you very much. Let's switch to the topic of discussion, especially that will impact this country with the workforce that comes in potentially in the next few years. We have come from expired degrees to science teachers being increased of salaries, leaked exams, and the teacher is arrested for that. The president praising last week 4,200 LDUs that passed out, and he's saying this is a good force because he has S4s and degrees inside there. We also have about 200,000 young ladies and men that leave this country to go to the Middle East because they're trying to find greener pastures. Mr. Fadjil, let me start with you because you have been in this sector for a while. There's a new curriculum. It is on 7 components. It has 7 pillars there. It's competence-based. It is rolled out. The teachers are there. Some of them are trained, some are not. What is the state of our education system and sector, in your view?
Thank you very much, moderator. First of all, of course, as you've said, I've been in this field for a long time. Since 1971, I've been a teacher trainer, I've been a headmaster, I've been a district education officer, and I've worked at the ministry as a commissioner. What I'm seeing really, the problem is, it is rolling around what sort of human being, what sort of Ugandan are we making? And for me, I think the problem is that as a country, we have not sat together to agree on what sort of man or woman we want in the country. Because when you define that, when you define what sort of man you would like to see on the streets or in the offices, what sort of woman you want to see, then you have to make the programs which make that human being. So because we are not really clear about who or what do we want out of our school system, then we have not put the right programs in the right place at the right time. Although, of course, now, rightly, there is the new curriculum which we are talking about. And for me, I was very happy when I learned about the new curriculum. By that time was when I was still working in the Ministry of Education, and also when I finished and I was working as an education consultant. The new curriculum is actually big news for me, and it should be big news for all Ugandans. For me, I thought that when they came out clearly to say that all the young people who were finishing Senior 4, and this was out of a valid research carried out by the NCDC with other teammates, that this curriculum was not producing the right worker in the field and the right employer in the field. All right? Now, they mentioned, of course, and I want to begin from this point. I don't know if the time will be enough, but then NCDC came out what exactly was wrong with the product of the Senior 4 lever. What was missing? In short, the person who went through, and that maybe has happened to all of us who are seated here, because this did not define that the Senior 4 people who were produced in the system were only in the 1970s or 80s or 90s. It was just that they lack what NCDC has called the generic skills. Generic skills, the other word you can use and say, you can think that by the time we finish Senior 4, we are lacking life skills or essential skills to live. And they mentioned, I will not mention all of them. They mentioned 13 generic skills that we have found that we are missing after doing the research with the employers and the products or the levers of Senior 4. They found that the finishers were lacking one, for example, literacy skills. They could not read and understand. Number 2, they lacked team building skills. They lacked skills of planning and self-management. They lacked skills of thinking. They lacked skills of numeracy, using figures in order to solve problems or create things. They lacked skills of curiosity, the spirit of let me find out what is going to happen, because a human being must always find out the world, what God created for us, and find out and how to use it. So really that means that we are producing a human being, okay, who is not sufficiently developed in order to have the essential skills which dictate the way you live your life. In fact, when I hear, of course, the fact is Africa and Uganda, we have the fastest growing population. And then I ask, but what sort of population is it? Is a population only gratified because of the numbers? No, a population is, and I want to underline this, a population, for example, Ugandans should be known worldwide, and Africa should produce people who own or who have skills that can be used in order to take advantage of what God gave us. Because I'm sure Africa is one of the most gifted continents on earth. So we need to really emphasize the development of the soft skills, the real skills that make. But presently, I think the whole world, the whole Uganda is pulled by what is happening in technology, what is happening in ICT. Thereby, we are actually making even the situation worse. I have no quarrel with ICT and technology and robots and so on and so forth, but I am very worried about the de-skilling of the human being.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Doctor. Doctor, you've also been in this field a while. This education curriculum, not the new one, the one we had before, was brought in by the colonialists. Last week we were discussing something closer to that. Did we tailor make it? Are we just on quantitative? Are we following qualitative? And also looking at what Mr. Fajil has said, the Ugandan we want to see. In your thoughts, in your presumption, is our education system still relevant for global needs?
Okay, thank you. You know, when you talk about the old curriculum, and we are speaking about the S1 to S4, because the new curriculum, that is where it is. Now, the S1 to S4 curriculum, like he has said, is curriculum that was left behind by the colonialists. And all we have been doing since the 1960s is to add bits and pieces into it and not overhaul it. But as you're aware, society is so dynamic that if you have a curriculum designed 10 years ago and you continue to use it, then you're not doing a service to the children who are going through that curriculum and to the country indeed, because as things change out there, the education system should change at the same speed, more or less, with the way things are changing. And so this curriculum, having taken this long, it was no longer giving relevant content. In fact, if you look at some of the things that were being taught, and you go to those places, if you take the geography, for example, and you visit those places, you'll actually find that the things we're still teaching does not even exist in those places where that is being talked about in the curriculum. And what does that then mean? It means that we were spending a lot of time teaching things that children will not use when they get out of the school system. Things that, if we now think globally, because as we're saying, it's a global village, you're learning about something happening in the US, and it's not there. It used to be there. And so you go there and you are really misplaced. But also the other thing that we need to look at is, why do we focus so much on the US, on Europe? And I'm talking about the old curriculum, not the new. And we are forgetting our own. Do we know our own history? Do we know our own geography? How can we make use of our own, the history we've gone through, the society the way it used to be, how it has evolved? If you ask children who have gone through that curriculum, they don't know it. And yet they live in this society. And it's important that they know the things in their society before they are competent in things outside their own country. And so that was another gap with the old curriculum, focusing so much on outside things and leaving out very important content, the culture, which is really what would make them the kind of person that Uganda needs. You need to be rooted in this culture. And I believe that, when you're well rooted, it's very difficult to sway you. So even when you talk about technology, you know how to select the good of the technology and don't go in for everything in the technology, because you need to go for things that are relevant. You go for things that are useful. Now that was problematic. The other thing with the old curriculum was it was overloaded. Too much content. And because there was too much content, the teachers were basically telling the children. So the teaching was telling the children instead of involving the learners. And as you know, when you tell me, I will hear it and I will forget it. But when I actually participate in the teaching learning process, the possibility of me remembering what I have done in class when I get out of class is very high. Now that was missing in the old curriculum. And that is why, we refer to it was very teacher-centered kind of curriculum with little involvement of the learner. And related to that, we then got into this sway where the grades became more important than the learning. And so everybody was rushing to ensure that you get the best course, you get first grade. And so teaching then was to the exams and not to the skills, the values, the knowledge that we need out there. You pass exams, and that is it. Another challenge there. And so when you talk about education not enabling the learners to be employed, some of those reasons I explain. What do we value? And what do the children value? What do the students value? And we need to recognize that for students to learn something, they start by looking at what is assessed. So learning starts from assessment. Once they know what is assessed, that's what they'll learn. when they know that certain things are not being assessed, they won't learn it, and yet those may be important things. So I think those are some of the challenges we've had with the old curriculum.
Doctor, sticking with you, and you have done very well with giving us the preamble and giving the foundation of the old curriculum. When you look at it in hindsight with the new curriculum, when you compare the two, are we getting the Ugandan that Mr. Fajil is talking about?
In the long run, I would say so. And I'm saying in the long run because the new curriculum is coming in the middle. You have P1 to P7, you have S5 and S6, and you have university. So you have this curriculum introduced in the middle, and for us to have it holistically and get the Uganda we need to begin looking at what are we teaching the ones who go to pre-primary and then come to primary, transit to secondary, and continue to the university. So that curriculum, the line through must be speaking the same thing. You know, it's interesting in education. If you have the school do one thing and the home does another, the information that is given in school is not reinforced outside. For the child will begin to see that as school thing and not home thing, not things for the outside. And so, if this curriculum is to lead us to the Uganda we need, we also need to begin looking at how are the parents supporting this. So the parenting part of it becomes an important component as well. A parent may not know how to read and write, but a parent can support a child, encourage a child, just a matter of saying, what did you learn today? And you know, the new curriculum is about doing. And the child will actually go and do it when they get out of the class as well. And so if they're doing it at home and doing it out of the class and a parent is supporting it, that means home is beginning to reinforce the learning introduced in schools. And with that hope, I think I'm very positive that we will get fruitful results from the new curriculum.
Something you said about results, and I'll come back to that one, especially when we look at the quality, the results we want, and we're only following the results there. Samuel, let me come to you. Especially with the liberalization, you are in a space that has liberalized education there. Education is meant to be an equalizer for everyone, but it seems to have haves and have-nots. In your view, how do we bridge that gap, that it is a benefit to every Ugandan?
Well, thank you. I want to take this as a tripod. First, as an educationist, as a parent, because I have school-going children. My son is in senior 2, and my daughter is writing PLA, I have to, this year. But also as an investor or an entrepreneur, rather an employer. In response to your question, equality would be the goal of every education. But in a situation where things are not working to the satisfaction of man, man always devises ways how he will navigate the terrain. My senior Fajil has discussed, and my senior Bet have discussed the challenges of education. And I want to begin by 2 quotes. Quote number 1 is, when we talk of education and quality education or success in education, it is not one island in an ocean. Should I repeat it? Success in education is not an island in an ocean, one island in an ocean. It has to be the entire ocean challenged and navigated. And we need to start thinking of education system as a whole, not as pieces. She mentioned it very well. Now you bring a competence-based curriculum, senior 1 to senior 4. You didn't look at primary 1 to primary 7. You didn't look at university. I was somewhere interacting with university lecturers, looking at their curriculum. They are training teachers who are going to teach senior 1 to senior 4, but the curriculum they are using is 1960s. But you're training somebody who will be employed in 2030. What a mismatch. What a state of quagmire. So we want to look at the whole system. I want us to look at the system of education. How does it work? It doesn't work in isolation. One, we have to look at, I don't know, as I go back to the old curriculum, did we look at Uganda 2030 when we were using that curriculum? Or we looked at Uganda 1970? Were we training these children for the future or for the past? Those are questions that have not been answered by the old curriculum. As a parent, another quote I would say from one of the American presidents, I would say, I send my child to come back with this answer. What have you become as a result of education? So the question the education must answer very well, and the new curriculum should answer very well, is what is it making of our children in terms of their personality, in terms of their values, in terms of their perspective, in terms of their skilling, in terms of their attitude. Because education shapes humanity. A nation cannot perform beyond its education, right? A nation will never perform beyond its education. The quality of education is the quality of the citizens. Therefore, looking at the old curriculum, which was focused on a high stakes, grades, whether somebody can read or not, if you get a first grade, whether you have got it genuinely or fraudulently, you have the algebraic equation, you have to go. And that's what we are saying now as educationists and the parents and the employers. When we get these people from schools, what have the education made of them?